Alright. So today, I'm gonna be doing Azil's. I don't know if anyone's ever seen the YouTube channel Azil. He goes on VR chat basically, and people have like confession stories. I'm gonna do an entire collab, like just a montage of all his military stories, military confessions and whatnot. So this could be graphic, but I do have a warning on my channel that there's violence, graphic content. So with that warning out there, we're gonna start.
So that's a hell of a title. Let's talk about how I can verify that this guy's legit, because that's going to be everyone's first question. I have seen many photos from him in action. I will be showing some of them during this video, and we're going to be getting drunk, by the way. I have some Absolute, he has some White Claw. We're just going to be going for it. This is going to be amazing. So, go ahead and start. I'm going to pour a shot, and just start talking about your time in the YPG, dude.
Okay, so I guess the first thing that'd be the best thing to do is to set up the situation here, because if I just start talking about the YPG, people won't know what I'm talking about 90% of the time. The YPG, aka also sometimes the PKK, also sometimes the SDF, bunch of acronyms, same dudes. They're basically the Turkish Kurds. And if you know anything, you okay?
Yeah, I'm good, I'm good.
See, that's what happens to you for drinking dry.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I can handle my booze. Okay, so the Kurds are the most displaced people group in the world. Basically, they're their own language, they're their own culture, and what happened was when the British conquered the area and started redrawing the maps a long time ago, they split the Kurdish country and the Kurdish people amongst a million other countries. So you got displaced Kurds that are in Turkey, you got displaced Kurds that are in Syria, you got displaced Kurds in Iraq, you got displaced Kurds in Iran, and after the chaos of ISIS's rise around 2014-15, friggin' Assad lost control of his country, and ISIS rolled in, they started naming themselves ISIL, and a lot of the Kurds that were in Turkey mostly were like, this is our opportunity. There's chaos here. We can take some of our land back. We can create an independent Kurdistan. And so they did. And the PKK, they have their own crazy ideology. They're kind of super commie. They don't agree with exactly that. It's complicated. But either way, a lot of them became part of the YPG, or the People's Protection Units, and they fought ISIS to a standstill in Kobani. And the world was pretty amazed that this one little people group in this one town blocked this onslaught of ISIS, because at the time ISIS was taking territory everywhere, and then it just stopped, and it was hands down because of these Kurds that were ferocious fighters. That's the backdrop of it. They're kind of a terrorist-ish or terrorist-adjacent organization. They are considered a terrorist organization by Turkey because they've been involved in violent acts of terrorism there, but they've also had violent acts against them. If you're in Turkey, you are not allowed by law to speak Kurdish or Kurmanji or your own language, and a lot of them talk to me about their personal stories, how like family members were tortured. There's no opportunity there. They're considered second-class citizens, and the Kurdish people are considered second-class citizens in almost every one of those countries I mentioned because they happen to be the minority in that chunk. In Iraq, they became the Peshmerga. You have the northern Iraqi side of things. Historically, we kind of screwed them over when it came to Desert Storm and the Gulf War.
We have a tendency to do that.
Yeah, right. It's not the first time. Basically, George Bush told the Kurdish people in Iraq to rise up. Now's your chance. And then we just stopped Desert Storm and we went home. And the Kurdish people were like, whoa, I thought we were allies. What the heck happened here? And then Saddam Hussein ended up gassing tens of thousands of them. In Iran, I don't know the specifics of their scenario, but I hear it's the same thing. Either way, they want an independent country, and as far as I'm concerned, they deserve an independent country. I know this is going to be a controversial statement. Kind of a bunch of dicks.
Yeah.
They didn't... they're the kind of people who, even the Taliban would be like, whoa, that's a little much, guys. They used to behead people, but more, they used to put people in cages and set those cages on fire. You used to watch videos of them wrapping debt cord around people's necks and just blowing up people's heads right down the line. Captured locals. Another one, they put in a big iron cage and they lowered them and drowned them in a swimming pool. And what really is that they were crucifying Christians at the time. It was a little ramshackle crucifixions they were holding, just like in the middle of town square. It wasn't your like usual incredibly evil, fanatical Islam crazy. It was like a cartoonish kind of evil. They were just testing the boundaries to see how evil they could be at the time.
They're literally the bad guys. Like, they're just the bad guys.
Yeah.
Because I lost my email.
I don't know how you could defend that and be like, oh, there's a gray area. Like, not with ISIS. They're snidely whiplash, like twirling their mustache and tying maidens to the railroad tracks going, yes, I'm evil. I didn't care. It's 2015. I had gotten out of the Army, and I just got out of my contract with the SEALs, and I'm back in the States. I'm taking some of my educational benefits, and I see this report on CNN with Jordan Mattson. And Jordan Mattson is the first Western volunteer who became part of the Lions of Rojava, and he volunteered. I believe he was an ex-soldier who lived in Wisconsin. He hated what was going on there, and he decided, I'm going to go help. And he did, and he took a plane ride. He was the first one there. He's the whole quarterback of the team. And I'm like, you know what? I think I could do that too. So I did. First thing you do when you wanted to join the YPG is you just get on Facebook. Boop, 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 boop. Hey, I would like to join the YPG. You just go on their homepage, the Lions of Rojava, and all of a sudden a little message pops up and says, good, you buy your own ticket. Here's a phone number. Good luck. See ya whenever. And so I buy my own plane ticket. And I just fly to downtown Sulaymaniyah, Iraq. And I guess my first story is, here I am. It's 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm in downtown Sulaymaniyah, right outside the airport. I don't speak the language. I'm unarmed. And worst off, there is a $150,000 bounty on my forehead, because what ISIS did is they started seeing all these Westerners come over, and they're like, if you capture a Westerner alive, we'll pay you $150,000 so we can behead him in a nice video.
How did they get the money for this?
$150,000? Oh, ISIS? Let's see. I would say they did capture large quantities of oil fields, and a lot of terrorists end up making their money to spread their little caliphate idea from a couple donors. You have donors in South Africa, you have donors in Saudi Arabia. A lot of people, the Wahhabist tradition, that have a lot of money have no problem donating a little bit money for the cause. So there's supporters for that sort of thing around the world.
Wow, that's like the worst charity ever.
Right. Now on Kickstarter, kill Westerners. Kickstart my little thing for $150,000. I'll give you the knife after we're done cutting this guy's head off.
Oh my God.
So I'm in downtown. I'm incredibly vulnerable. I type up the number that I've been given on Facebook, tip, 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 and all I get is a bunch of gibberish because I don't speak the language. I'm like, oh shit, what do I do here? And so I tried flagging down a couple taxis, and maybe the 5th or 6th one, some rando guy had mercy on me and like, hey, here, let me take this. He spoke English, and he handed it to the taxi driver. The taxi driver puts the phone to him and like, durka, 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 and I get into the back of this taxi, and it's an incredibly scary scenario when I'm in the back of this taxi. I'm in a dangerous place. There is a giant bounty on my head. There are reports of locals hanging around the airports trying to snatch Westerners just for this express purpose, because $150,000 is millions. That would make that person's whole life, right? And the other thing that made that incredibly dangerous was the fact that the person we had contacted on Facebook, either her brother or her cousin, was part of ISIS. So the whole thing could have been a setup. I could have been buying my own plane ticket to pay for my own beheading. It's a scary scenario. Are they going to pull in this alley and kill me? Are they going to pull over in that alley and kill me? And thank Jesus, they just took me to the actual safe house. It's a little hole in the wall, mostly a lot of cement. It's the first time I got to experience the bathroom scenario in there, which is just a hole in the ground that you gargoyle, squat, and poop in. And I also met, I think there was a nice German lady there who was very much into the political scenario at the time. There was the guy that was trying to do the logistics, that answered the phone, that didn't speak a lick of English, and there was an American there. So at least I'm like, oh, good, an American that speaks. At least I can die with another person that speaks English. Thank God. So that's I guess that's the first story, is not getting beheaded in downtown Soleimani, Iraq.
The taxi driver, what's like the general political opinion of people in the area?
Well, luckily Soleimani is in the northern part of Iraq. So if you go to southern Iraq, that would have been infinitely more dangerous. But the northern part, even though America totally screwed over the Kurds, they're gracious enough to not really hold that against us. So they had no problems with Americans in the northern part of Iraq. They're cool dudes. One of the funny things is northern Iraqi Kurds, their defense army is called the Peshmerga, and I met one of the Western volunteers that were coming to go fight for the Peshmerga instead of the YPG, and he got greeted outside the airport with a Humvee and a red carpet rolled out, and like two dudes decked with medals, the way that like tin pot dictators like to throw a medal on every loose piece of clothing they have. He got the greetings and the trumpets, and then they rolled off, and I'm like, oh, okay, bye. And he was making fun of me on the plane because it's like, you joined the YPG? Cool, when I fly over you, I'll see your, like, torch, your stick that's on fire waving around to come down and get you because you're about to experience life as a caveman. Their political thing is they're cool with Americans. So, yeah, that was fine.
That's good, at least.
Right, so after the safe house, we went to a mountain camp. So you get in the car, you go way out to the mountains in the northwest quadrant of Iraq in the Aziz Mountains. And there we were in for like a month in a PKK camp in the mountains. It had nothing. It was just like 2 cement bunkers and a bunch of tents. This whole scenario is starting in the spring, so it's mud season, and the clay mud would cling to your boots and try to suck you into the earth like you're not going anywhere. Things of note about this camp. The food is amazing at this camp. I don't know what they do, but all the food there consisted of, like, them getting together one day and cooking for, like, the next month, and they would just, like, get a child's swimming pool full of dough and create, like, this oven-baked bread, and then stuff it in a big old, like, oil barrel, and that would just be your bread barrel for the rest of the month. A lot of sugar, a lot of tea, things like that. The camp was PKK. They were incredibly, very politically minded people. Their thought system is complex. I hate to say just communism, but if you ask them, if you create a society today, if you get this Rojava thing, how are you going to run it? They would say that your individual house belongs to the state, and you belong to the state, and your business belongs to the state, and your prices are going to be set by the state. And I'm like, well, how is that different than like Soviet style? And they would say, oh, no, we don't have a dictator. We have a rotating series of chergas, almost like your life is going to be controlled not by Stalin, but by your homeowners association. Yeah, and they continue to mix in anything that really sounds good that a lot of people like. You have your fourth wave feminism. You had your environmental people that are like, it's all about the environment and stuff like that. Anything that got to college kids. And what you began to understand is these guys, they didn't have an education, and that's not a judgment call on my part. I'm blessed and privileged to be educated, but these guys in Turkey, they've had maybe a third grader's education, a third grader's understanding of history, a third grader's understanding of like how the world works, and I'm not knocking on them. I wish them the best. I fought with them, but I would say that it was an enemy of my enemy situation where I just needed to fight ISIS because they were crucifying Christians and they were bad people. I wouldn't say I was fighting with the YPG. I would say I was fighting for the YPG. And I think that's why Trump ended up dumping them at the end of the whole thing. Remember, it was very brief in the news where Donald Trump was like, there are bad guys there too, so we're gone. After ISIS had pretty much been decimated in the area, he just ditched the Syrian Kurds, just the way George Bush ditched the Iraqi Kurds. I guess there's some rhythm to history there. We're in the PKK camp for a month, and it's time to cross the Tigris River. Let me pull a drink for this one. It's a doozy.
Oh boy.
Arms up, buddy. You're drinking way more intense than me. I got some friggin' White Claws, like SEMA levels of alcohol.
No, I'm gonna be fucked up far before you.
Okay, so the very first time we tried to cross, it's not that big of a deal, but the attempt didn't go quite correct. We're in the back of kind of a short bus. I don't know where they got this thing from, and they're driving down the mountains, and we're getting to the river, and we find this little open section of the river, and there's maybe 20 or 30 people, because you have a lot of Syrians on both sides waving to each other. Some in Syria trying to get into Iraq, some in Iraq trying to get to Syria, and you had maybe 10 or 12 Westerners there at the time. And one of the things that had happened is some of the people that were speaking English couldn't keep their yammer shut like they were supposed to, and word got around that there are a bunch of Westerners here, which was considered a big no-no with the Iraqis, and we're crossing one little inflatable boat at a time with a little outboard motor, so we're there for like an hour, when all of a sudden a bunch of cars pull out of nowhere and start surrounding us, and it's the Iraqi border security, and they're like, what's going on here? What the heck's happening? I don't understand, because I don't speak the language, but I do know that one of the problems is the world's fattest Russian had swamped the boat. Like, it was a boatload of one guy, and he was so obese that it caused the only little raft to halfway sink when the border patrol's like right there up our butthole, and it's like, well, what am I supposed to swim the river? So friggin' we take off. We get in our we kind of there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of chaos going on, and we're all kind of eking to the side, don't mind me, and the 12 Westerners get back on the short bus, and we just take off. So we're like, well, crap, that didn't work out. They didn't like us there. We got some of the Westerners through, but we're going to have to try this again. 2 weeks later, we attempt again, but this time a whole different tactic. It's a starless night. There is not a star out. The moon's not out. It's pitch black, and it's like crossing the Rio Grande, where we're running through farm fields, and the only person that can see is the one Kurd in the very front of the group of 12 people that has night vision, and we're all just holding on to each other, and we're running through farm fields, and dogs are starting to bark, and farmers are waking up, and lights are turning on, and we get to a street, and it's like, oh, okay, wait for the car. All right, go, you, everybody stop, next car. So when this happens, one of the Westerners that were with us, this Asian fella, not to be stereotypical, of course, he had to pack his giant suitcase full of camera equipment, and we're not even talking normal phone camera. We're talking your shoot for the National Geographic film camera he brought with us. He took a tumble down the other side, and he got his eye stuck on a sticker bush so bad that when he moved his eye around, the big thorn was moving with him, oh my God, are you okay? And we continue on, because it's what else are we gonna do? We don't call 911. We get to the edge, finally, of the Tigris River. They sneak out their little boat again. It's not even inflated, so we're sitting here for an hour nobody's got a pump or anything like that. There is no onboard motor this time. It's just two little raft paddles trying to get across the Tigris. We load up and we load in, and we're halfway paddling. It's exhausting. The nice Kurdish lady is yelling at me to go faster, and it's come on, zoot, or whatever the heck it was. What is this? A Iraqi patrol boat comes down the river and just ka-thunk, you hear the sound of the spotlight hit this boat, and I just freeze like a deer in the headlights, hi, this is where I die. He's got a machine gun on the back of that thing. He could light all of us up right now, and I'm thinking to myself, why did I waste so much time playing Worlds of Warcraft? Why didn't I live my life? And it was only maybe 5 to 10 seconds. To me, it felt like an eternity. And the spotlight goes off. And he just continues driving, the patrol boat just sputters back past us. And I don't know what did it. I don't know if the guy just didn't want to do the paperwork. I don't know if the guy just, had a understanding with the YPG, yeah, Kurd pride. But for whatever reason, he just let us go in the middle of the night. And we continue paddling. Of course, the boat flips over at some point. All of our stuff is, getting carried off by, it looks like a still river. It's not still. It's It's rapids underneath. We grab some of the suitcases. We're swimming like to the very, very edge. My buddy like has a cigarette in his hand, and all you see poking out of the river is this one cigarette. Like I'm keeping it dry. Blup, 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 blup. we got across. We're on the other side of the Tigris River. We got smuggled like it was the Rio Grande. We wait for a while. A van pulls up. We dogpile into the thing. We're taken to a water treatment facility, which is a staging area to the next portion of the journey. We look like we just got through the wacky, wild log flume ride. We're soaked head to toe, and they're like, "God damn, what happened to you people?" Huh? That was how we got smuggled across the Tigris. Another drink.
Jesus Christ, you know it. Oh, still not used to that.
It's strong?
Yeah.
Strong, much strong. So, continuing chronological, let's see. We went to Academia, and Academia is after the water treatment facility. We went to a place where you're supposed to be trained up on some of the Soviet weapon systems. Remember that not everybody that's with us was prior military. It wasn't really a requirement. They were taking anybody. I met a guy who was an actor on Pirates of the Caribbean. Michael Enright. Michael Enright has had this documentary called Haval, and he was an extra on Pirates of the Caribbean. There's this one scene where he's like, "Captain, come look," and that's like his only line. He went to go fight for the YPG. Other people were cooks. Some guy was just a cook. Another person was like just a laid-back Californian surfer. So not everybody knew their way around a gun. Not everybody knew the military lingo or what they were supposed to do when clearing a room and all this other stuff. That was their opportunity to be trained, and it was good for me too, because I don't know how to use a RPG, but I do now. I guess that's a good time to take a sideline and talk about some of the Westerners I was there with. We had kind of a Legion of Lost Souls or a Legion of the Damned feel to it, where you had a lot of people that they had wanted to be soldiers, they had wanted to be war heroes, they wanted action and adventure and meaning and purpose and identity and all this stuff their whole lives, but something had prevented that. For some of the Western volunteers, it was a medical thing. We had a guy that like he just wanted to be a soldier his whole life, but he went into the military and he found out he had heart palpitations. He had like a heart arrhythmia or whatever, where it just sometimes doesn't beat correctly. And the military's like, "We're not taking you. You could drop dead any moment if you keep jogging. So have a nice day." We had other people that had like criminal records. They come from military families. Every Thanksgiving, all their family gets together and talks about how great it is to be in the military, and they feel excluded because they had done something dumb as a child and it went on their permanent record, and the Army said no. Again, we had the actor. We just had laid back people, and we had political people that just really was like, "I really love socialist democracy so much I'll kill for it." I know for a long time there were Nordic bikers that were in the area fighting ISIS. ISIS was so miserable that like everybody got together in a big fellowship to come beat them up.
It's like all the Marvel characters at the end of the movie coming to fight Thanos. What the hell?
You're right. A big portal opens and it's a bunch of bikers whipping chains. So yeah, we had all sorts of interesting characters, and I guess I'll get to them one at a time as their stories intersect. Yeah, so we're at Academia. We train in some Soviet stuff, and after that, it's off to the front lines. Like, in the car you go. We get there, and the front lines consist of just a bunch of dilapidated, half-bombed out, abandoned villages over and over and over again. And what would happen usually is we would fire at ISIS, they would fire back, that would give us their positions, and then some guy would get on the radio going, airstrike here please, airstrike there please. They would get bombed, and they would take off with who's left, and we would move into their area, and it would just continue that process over and over and over.
Okay, so who's doing the airstrikes?
The airstrikes were coalition force airstrikes, so I can't say they were exclusively American. You also had a lot of European, I think you had a lot of European forces that were also in the air that wanted ISIS dead.
Huh, and they just helped you out. You tell them where they were, and they just hit them.
Yeah, they love it. Why wouldn't they? Lockheed Martin gets paid, Radon gets paid, the taxpayer gets screwed. Drop a $10,000 to $500,000 JDAM on it. They don't care. The money keeps flowing. Yeah, they loved it. Especially they didn't have any boots on the ground to worry angry about, right? Like, they keep getting soldiers killed, so it looked great for them politically, so the politicians loved it. It was a way to seem strong on terrorism. Everybody was getting in on it at the time. So that was kind of where a lot of the stories come from. I'm trying to think chronologically which one I want to talk about. I friggin' got attacked by a pack of wild dogs at a grain elevator. I pinned down ISIS while a Spectre gunship frickin' rocked the area and schwacked 20, 30 dudes. There were a couple A-10 warthogs in the air giving that signature. I was in the blast radius of like a 2,000-pound JDAM or joint. It's a bomb. It's just a bomb, I just call it that. Yeah, just a lot of crazy times in the back of a frickin' technical, as in like a Toyota Hilux with a machine gun welded to the back, frickin' hitting the butterfly trigger and sending 23mm rounds down into random buildings where ISIS was located.
We gotta hear the Spectre. We gotta, because by the way, I checked. I was like, pushing him for verification and everything. They had Spectres in the air during this. Like, American forces were the ones with the Spectres. They were just collaborating. So it's legit. Again, but go ahead. I gotta hear this.
Sure. For those of you that do not know, a Spectre gunship is pretty much like a C-130, a C-140, and it's a giant cargo plane that they removed all the cargo and all the unnecessary stuff, and they're like, what are we gonna do with this extra space? I know. Let's throw howitzers in it. Let's throw Vulcan mini cannons in it. Let's throw all the ammunition and all the bombs in the universe in this gunship, and then just nonchalantly, slowly tilt to the side, and in a big circle, frickin' bomb, and kill. That's a Spectre gunship.
Literal kill streak.
Oh, yeah, right. That's pretty funny, because Call of Duty, I think, if you get a big enough kill streak, you call a Spectre gunship, and it just schwacks all of your enemies in Call of Duty. And to them, they're very far away from the damage they're doing. They're very alienated from it. Maybe they feel the reverberation of their cannons, but otherwise they're just like little white dancing dots on their little thermal screen. I'm sitting right here in the blast radius of the thing, and I'm feeling it. And in this particular instance, we chased ISIS out of certain areas, and we managed to pretty much corral them and encircle them, but they were very, very well entrenched, and it was super dark. Again, it's a starless night, and you can't see a single thing, and I'm just taking my position along a berm with all my friends around me, and all of a sudden, there's fire. Like, the ground is shaking, and night, day, as frickin' these rounds are completely frickin' schwacking this building. And frickin' like, alright, if anything moves, if anything gets close to you and someone tries to break for an escape, you plug them in the head. And frickin' the only thing I remember the most was, like, what did move through the perimeter were hungry dogs. Dogs were all over in this deployment, and I guess you don't really realize it because dogs are pets here in America and we love them very much, but if you don't feed a dog long enough, they're scavengers. They're going to eat whatever they can, and in this particular instance, they were eating some of the dead bodies that had been left when we went into this area. So here we are, frickin' the Spectre gunship is putting ISIS through Satan's merry-go-round. And the
I love the way people tell military stories.
And shaking, and flames are jetting up, and that's illuminating just enough to see dogs ripping up dead ISIS people and chowing down on them. Like,
This sounds like a fucking movie.
right? All I can think of is, this is the coolest fucking moment of my life. I was free. I was free in a way that I've never been in my life. If you think about it, like, I'm born, I gotta go to school, what do they tell you? Sit down, shut up, keep your hands to yourself, look but don't touch, read this, think that, teach to the test, vomit back my information at me, you can't poop without permission, you'll go eat when you ring the bell. Also, I can get trained to become a corpo zombie. Yes, sir, coming, sir, right away, sir, anything for a raise, sir, under halogen lights and all this Dilbert life, meaningless lifestyle. And so I'm like, I don't want any of that. I want to join the military. I want to drive tanks and be awesome every single day of my life and kick butt and chew bubblegum. But I got into the Army, and due to a paperwork fluke, I got to division where I did spreadsheets and data entry in front of a dumb light for military intelligence. And I'm like, I hate this. I hate this so much. But here, in this moment, it was amazing. It wasn't given to me by a travel agency. There were no guardrails. If I died right there, nobody would have known that I had been dead for a month. Could just shoot my gun wherever I wanted without asking the manager and asking my sergeant and like 3 different things of paperwork. Oh, am I permitted to do this, sir? No, I just got to live life in this amazing, adventurous thing. So that was cool. That's like one of my best days.
A drink to freedom.
Drink to freedom.
Indeed.
America.
Real quick, I'd like to interject. Frightem.
Yeah, Frightem the dog.
Frightem the dog, by the way, and I'll send pictures to you.
I have a roommate in the room right now, and he reminds me to talk about Frightem the dog. Silly side story. A lot of the Westerners were not people that natively spoke English, and so they would graffiti all the time in English, or attempt to, and one of the things they graffitied was, for Frightem, because they had misspelled freedom.
The main one was actually C-Pan.
Yep, I'll talk about him.
Him and Argash both misspelled freedom.
Yep.
But Frightem would sit on the berm and growl at fucking ISIS guys coming at him.
Frightem was a dog, basically, that we found. And this poor, if you know anything about dogs in Syria, they're like Shetland pony-sized beasts. They're big guys, and they're always covered with the kind of weird fleas that when you try to pick them out, they buzz and they fly to another section of the dog. You're like, oh my god, this thing is infested and gross, and no wonder all the Middle Easterners hate dogs so much. And yeah, he was the coolest dude. He would sit on the berm. Unfortunately, a lot of the YPJ people, the YPG are the Kurdish guys, the YPJ are the quote-unquote warrior women of the YPG. You can see a lot of like Hollywood hyper-reality movies of like the YPJ acting like Wonder Woman and like shooting at ISIS and things like that. And I think the big allure for the YPJ was the fact that in Islam, or at least as ISIS understood it in Islam, if you get killed by a woman, you don't get to go to heaven. So they're terrified about getting shot by the YPJ, because they're like, but my 40 virgins, what am I supposed to do? I tried to get killed by a man. They were a hoot. They were really annoying in their own ways too sometimes, but I mean, whatever. Most of them are dead now, so why hold on to anger issues with the YPJ? Yeah, we had a gentleman with us named C-Pan. If you're out there, buddy, we love you. He was an Asian person. Funny enough, because he was Asian, all the journalists that would pop into camp every once in a while and talk to us, they're like, check it out. Even China's here sending their volunteers to come fight ISIS. And it's like, dude, this guy's from the United Kingdom. He just happens to be Asian. And one of the funniest things was I had a sat phone, and one day somebody called me on the sat phone. I'm like, what the? This is only an outgoing phone. Who the hell calls me on this thing? Ring, ring, ring. Hello? It's C-Pan's mother. And she's yelling at me like, you put my son right on the line right now. And, okay, yes, ma'am. And I bring the phone to him in a war zone, and he's getting chewed out by his mother for graffitiing and for, like, telling people he's from China. And so here he is, this great warrior who's fought and killed ISIS, getting chewed out by his mother. You're never too old to disobey mom.
Never too old or too cool.
Yeah, C-Pan was a hootenanny. He could cook real well. He was good at a nice massage at the end of a bad day. And he used to poop on beds. Wouldn't stop pooping on beds, buddy.
Intentionally, or?
Yeah, I don't know what was psychologically wrong. There was a lot of weird psychology going on with a lot of these people. The YPG particularly, they were so politically strong-minded that when we went into a village, they were like, is this money? This is capitalist grossness. And they would rip up money. Like, what? This is someone's money. They would rip up wedding photos because they're like, no, you can only get married to Abdullah Öcalan, Uncle Oppo, the great leader. Like, okay. I mean, obviously, us Western volunteers aren't much better because we got a guy that just couldn't stop pooping on beds and pooping in drawers. because there's no accountability. Like, it's not the official policy of the YPG to hurt animals, to rip up wedding photos, etc., etc. But you have to remember, these are a bunch of teenagers. The frontline fighters are a bunch of angry teenagers with third-grade education who's been given total freedom. And a lot of that time, it did not fully wind up well. I remember this one scenario where this poor lady dressed in black who didn't abandon her village was trying to hang her laundry, and one of the YPJ girls tried to light her up going, "It's ISIS!" And I'm like, whoa, stop, what the frick? We tackle her, like, what the F? This is just some random civilian that happens to be dressed in black, and I'm going to channel my inner drill sergeant here for a little bit, but I don't know what's freaking worse. The fact that you're trying to commit war crimes, or the fact that you're failing to commit war crimes? It's like, if you just listen to me about the 4 fundamentals of shooting, about trigger squeeze, and a steady sight picture, and a steady position, maybe you would actually be able to shoot the lady. You suck. You're wasting my time. Drink.
Yes, sir.
Let's see. Any questions, or you want me to continue with just the rando stories that occurred?
I mean, these YPJ, like, was there any kind of sexism in the YPG that was stopping them from doing what they wanted to do?
Well, there was sexism, all right, but not the way you'd think. This is hilarious, because the YPJ was like, you're not going to get us in burqas. We are liberated free women. We will display as much body as we choose. ISIS are a bunch of fundamentalist psychopaths. And then if I rolled up my sleeves because it's hot, they'd be like, oh, put that away. Oh, that's gross. You can't show people your arms. Why don't you just walk around naked? And you're like, there's a little bit of hypocrisy here, ladies. As for sexism, I guess I'm just kind of insulted from time to time because, like, you would go through these crazy scenarios day in and day out, and nobody gave a shit because every single journalist that would walk in wouldn't even ask you your name. They're just, tell us what you think about the YPJ. They're super cool, right? 10 out of 10, right? Day in and day out, just everybody chilling off the YPJ 24/7. And it's like, they're just human like anyone else.
Just a bunch of Western journalists being like proud women fighting ISIS.
Right, and God bless them, the ladies, for fighting them, but I can't be the guy that says, yeah, in the last firefight, the commander there curled up in a ball and started crying, because I didn't want to be the bad guy about it. A lot of the YPGA, very competent people, but like all people, male or female, you got a lot of screw-ups in the unit, and everyone's human. There's no need to put them on a pedestal.
Right. Diversity quotas in wartime.
Right. Since I'm talking about how the YPJ screwed up, I guess it would behoove me to be a little even-handed and tell you about how some of our Westerners screw up. We had been in the shit for like 3 or 4 months. We'd been bogged down in this one village forever. Some people are getting hurt. We're all hungry. We're tired. And after mission, this one guy, we pretty much called people by their states. California comes in, and we're talking about, like, we got to send some people back to Iraq and recross the Tigris so we can get to the marketplace so we can buy some goddamn thermals, because every night there's people out there that can see us and we can't see them. I'm just sitting here like with my bag of rice and my friggin' AK-47 that I had to file the bolt down. I can't see anything. We're endangered. So we're planning this trip, and California's like, me, I'm going. I have to go right now. And it's like, do you know any people at the marketplace? Do you have any money on you? Why are we sending you? Like, no, me. And he really is adamant about going there. We keep like telling him, no, go F yourself. This is a mission. He's talking about how he has to go there and get a hamburger right now. And he's walking in circles going, I just want a hamburger, I just want a cheeseburger, I just want a hamburger, cheeseburger. He's giving me the Burger King Whopper song. Hold the pickles, hold the lettuce, special orders, don't upset us, while he has his rifle on him. And he starts wigging out. He's on the other side, like, he mumbles out, and he's on the other side of the camp, and he's starting to just shoot wildly into buildings, yelling, I just want a cheeseburger! And I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to kill an American in the YPG, and like, what are the legal ramifications of this? What's the international law of I had to shoot a guy because he was a danger to himself and others, and he was mumbling about fucking Whoppers? Luckily, we talked him down. He put the rifle down, and he just kind of went home. So that could have turned out way worse. Moral of the story, everybody sucks. Okay, I love the 2,000-pound JDAM, so I'm going to go right into that one. It's again the dark night, no vision, anything like that, no stars, no moon. I'm in a trench, and that's what a lot of your time of the YPG was spent. There were two different places that you were. You either charged into a village and you punched a hole in the wall with like a hammer or your buttstock because it was a bunch of loose adobe, and you had what you'd call a spider hole, and you just stick your rifle through that, and you're like, all right, I'm covering my sector through the spider hole, through this friggin' jury-rigged bunker here. Or number two, you had a berm. You had a trench and a big pile of mud that you lived in your whole life. It was like a World War I scenario. And again, remember, it's mud season. You just sat in the mud all night long, in the cold, in the rain, et cetera, et cetera. And this time we're at a berm, and all of a sudden, it's daytime. You're like, what? It's like you're outdoors, and somebody flipped the light switch on, and for like 5 to 10 seconds, you're looking around, and I look to my left, and my buddy's picking his nose, and he just, with his finger in his nose, turns over and looks at me like, what? And then someone turns the light off again. And I'm like, well, that was frickin' weird. I know I'm not going crazy, because he clearly saw it, and 30 seconds later, the blast comes, and the ground shakes, and my cheeks are flapping like I'm in a like I'm in a frickin' G simulator, and the wind and the pressure hits your face, and you're like, oh my god! And it turns out that like at least a grid square or two away, someone dropped the biggest bomb that they had to have dropped in all the Syrian war. I don't know what their target was, but goddamn. If there's a 30-second countdown between the light reaching you versus the shockwave reaching you, and it went out that much, I hope the target was worth the cost of whatever the hell you dropped. Drinking!
I mean, I guess you won that fight without even trying.
Oh my god, right? Let's see here. There were 23mm shells everywhere. You'd think the scenario would be scary, right? Because we were getting lit up every freaking night. Well, one, like, blue fire, or what is it called? Blue on blue action. My roommate who's in the room with here, he lit me up with this. He lit me up with this PKM machine gun. It was night. We can't see anything. We just took new positions, and what had happened was the Kurds in the front started digging a berm, and the Kurds behind them started digging a berm, and we didn't realize that we had overlapping fields. So the Kurds behind me were all like, "Do you see that head? That is movement. Shoot that." And my buddy starts shooting at the movement. I'm like, "I'm the movement! Oh god!" I started getting raked by machine gun fire. And I'm like, "Sam, team, stop!" No worse for wear. Luckily, he's a shit shot. Apparently. Fuck. Love you too, buddy. Physically. But you get fired at a lot. I think the majority of our time was spent on one building that had a no man's land in between us, and the no man's land had a lot of mines in it, or at least they claimed. I never danced around it, I don't know. But I can guarantee that both sides definitely had some very good snipers, so nobody crossed this 1 kilometer in between our abandoned village versus the ISIS abandoned village. And so, what we do night after night is they would fire at us from a kilometer away with their dumb little beat-up AK-47s. They're like, "Hey, you stop that!" And I would fire at them, and their little muzzle flashes. My dumb little AK-47, which couldn't have been good up to any more than 500 yards, so nobody's hitting anybody. But a lot of zingers are getting close because there's just so much volume of fire every frickin' night. And when you're getting shot at outdoors, and it just happens so often, it becomes silly. It's like a circus, because these bullets are making the weirdest noises as they touch the ground, and then whoop, 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 off. Like, I'm gonna die to something that sounds like a clown's slide whistle. What is this nonsense? But there were times where we had to fire indoors, and that was infinitely more terrifying. We went into the school. We entered into the school. ISIS was supposed to be in there. We kicked down the door. Literally the whole part of the door. Like, imagine a metal door in an Adobe building, and you just drop kick it like the WWF. And it's not that the door swings open, it's that the whole frickin' like Adobe thing tears open and the other end. So like I run up to the window and I take a few pot shots, and I'm like, oh god, I wasn't wearing ear protection. It's so loud. Thor is mad at me because all the reverberation of the bullet is not going anywhere except in your inner ears. Oh sweet tinnitus, you cruel bitch. Drinking. Drink. Oh god. How about I relate to the story, which I did in the story circle, about the kid that took an RPG round and survived. That's a fan favorite.
Oh, that was a mess.
All right, so we're at this exact no man's land, and what had happened was, after 2 or 3 months, some ISIS fighter on the other side, I don't know if they were just not a fan of him, maybe he smelled funny, and the ISIS fighters were like, Barkwadon, I think Allah has willed it that you commit jihad right now, and they sent him off, and they gave him an RPG, and the mad lad charged half of no man's land before the sniper got him and blew his brains out. But before he died, he got that RPG round off. It went 500 meters and it slammed into a building that was probably the size of your normal shed that one of our snipers, child soldier snipers, had happened to be sleeping in that night. And I wake up to the blast like, oh, what's going on? And we go there, and this kid's perfectly fine. He's in shock, he's concussed, he's a little disoriented, crawls out of the wreckage because it's this white adobe, and looking like he just wrestled a giant powdered donut, but he's got all of his limbs on him, he's got all of his blood inside of him, and for a person that just took an RPG round, you're like, huh, this kid should be dead. We've got nothing better to do. Let's do a little investigation. We have his shed. Half of the wall is completely blown off. The other half of the shed is perfectly fine, except for one little thing. There is a 1.5 by a 1.5 window with iron bars crisscrossing it. And in the dead center of what must be 5 inches by 5 inches or so, there's a hole straight in there. And so I'm like, well, that's interesting. I walk across to the field, the farm field next to him, and there's a giant crater in the ground that was not there an hour ago. And it's like, okay, what happened here? And I pick the scrap up, and we start freaking reassembling whatever the heck this was. And we get out our phones. It turns out what they fired at this kid was a PG-7.
Now that I have Chime with Spot Me, they can cover you up to $200 in between paychecks with no overdraft fees. Join me at chime.com.
Prepara un encantador regalo de San Valentín por solo $1.69. Este difusor de aroma.
And if you know anything about Soviet systems, a Russian PG-7 is a tandem 2-stage rocket. It's meant to blow the reactive armor off of a tank. So the first segment is supposed to blow the reactive armor off, and then the second is supposed to be a shape charge that jets in and kills all the tank crew. And so what had happened was the first charge, instead of killing reactive armor, blew through the first side of the building. And I don't know if the timer on it was a dud or it's some sort of second crush sensor, but either way, it flew 500 meters across this field and hit this postage note 5-inch by 5-inch dead center piece and blew up harmlessly in a field. And if it was any other scenario, if it hit the other side of the wall and then tanked on the ground for a little bit, it would have been blown up and the kid would have been dead. Or if it hit and immediately and the timer went off the way it was supposed to, the kid should have been dead. But by some miracle, some statistical anomaly, it just happened to hit that tiny little part and blow up harmlessly in a field. Maybe killed a chicken, I don't know. I guess that's the way miracles happen? It's always these weird statistical anomalies. Miracles these days don't tend to be Jesus popped out of a tortilla and healed my cancer. They just happen to be things that you're like, well, it's just coincidences like that. That was a hell of a coincidence.
God hooked that kid up, dude.
Yeah, right? That kid was awesome. He was our child soldier sniper. He carried a rifle that was bigger than him. The sniper rifle in question, you can Google it. It's called, just Google YPG Haroon. It is a ridiculous like, it's barely functional and kind of ridiculous how big this rifle is. It's a 23 millimeter, right? That's built off of a Dishka that they kind of just sliced up. Well, millimeter. 12 millimeter? Oh, it's a 12 millimeter. Either way, I know the YPG gets some flack sometimes. It's like, they're the bad guys. They're using child soldiers. But, like, you need to think about this. This kid's like 15, 16. His parents are dead. He's in a war zone. He's been held by the YPG for a while. Where are you going to go with them? We bring him to Turkey. They're just either going to throw him in prison for associating with the YPG, or he's going to starve on the street. So we just took him with us, and he was a cool kid, and he did a good job.
I mean, hey, at least he was sniping instead of going out there with an AK, right?
Yeah, right. I like what you had to say. He sounds like an anime character.
Yeah,
like, he does sound like an anime character.
He really sounds like the protagonist, dude.
Were you there when Kid Commander lit his own stomach up with like 5 rounds?
Oh my god. Are you talking about the guy that frickin' got just shredded in the gut by his own friends?
No, the guy that shredded himself because he wouldn't listen to us on folding the AK stock.
Oh god.
We called him the Kid Commander. He was our Westerner fucking commander only because he spoke a little English. He said every one of the goddamn child soldiers, he said he was 18. He couldn't have been more than fucking 15. Whatever. Fuck it. Don't care. Every day, he would stick his AK barrel into his stomach and push down on the lever to be able to fold his AK stock so that it would fold, and he would have his thumb on the trigger. And we kept telling him, that's a bad idea. Don't fucking do that shit. That's dumb. Don't do it. What's wrong with you? And then one day, he flipped the lever down 1 notch, which 1 notch down on an AK means full auto. And he took 5 rounds to the gut, and it took him a couple hours to die.
Ooh, womp womp. So, gun safety lesson, and also listen to your veterans if you're in a war. So, there were so many blue-on-blue actions. Like, I don't know if ISIS killed more Kurds or Kurds killed more Kurds, but I do remember, like, we were assaulting a village, and some guy just ended up shooting his friend. And the worst part of it is they wouldn't listen to, like, basic first aid training, because every day would be like, hey, see, it's Burkwadon, you want to come over here? We're going to train up on how to do some first aid, teach you how to do a tourniquet, et cetera, et cetera. And they'd be like, oh, no, that's dumb, you're dumb, Americans are dumb, we know everything in the world. Like, oh, cool, okay, well, that's fine. And so they would light each other up in these incidents, and I remember a bunch of Kurds just standing around their dying friend, like, hey, what are you doing? You are lazy, get up. And they would just like nudge him with their foot while the guy dies, and you're like, oh my god, this is keep the blood in the guy, it's plug the holes. It's not rocket science. Oh my god, those guys. Again, well-spirited, well-meaning, some of them were brighter than others. That is for certain.
Aren't we all?
Oh my god. There was a lot of bad scenarios that happened with animals. I remember there was this cow that after a village had been bombed that we dubbed the zombie cow. The zombie cow was a cow that half of this thing's face had been removed, and its tongue was just outrolled halfway outside of its face. It was shaky. It was like someone needs to put this poor cow out of its misery. The YPG obliged, but not in a good mercy kill way. It had a lot of, again, angry teenagers who were not managed very well. That was just, they lit it up. They were in their technical, they were in the behind the machine gun, pouring 23 millimeter rounds and exploding this cow that just wouldn't seem to want to die. The Kurds were all laughing about it, and some people were lighting it up with their AK-47s, and they're like, this is some John Conrad Heart of Darkness stuff right here, that like deep inside these angry, repressed teenagers going Lord of the Flies here in scenario, they're able to frickin' let loose and decimate this poor creature. It's something you have to consider. Like, people aren't the only ones that suffer during times of war. We got people that are dying. We got people that can't even eat. Nobody thinks about the animals. Like, they're not on the radar. We had this scenario where you had a lot of dogs that had not eaten for an immense period of time, and they all got together and they created a pack. and they were eating whatever they could. Any dead people that you didn't bury, they were gone. They were dog food now. And I was held up in a grain elevator at some point. I had given my rifle back to the truck. I was ready to cross back in Iraq. My time was like coming to a little bit of a complete thing. Frickin', I had no weapon. It's 2 a.m. This pack of dogs was okay in the daylight. They were kind of friendly and sniffing everyone out, seeing what they had. But now at night, the pack of dogs surrounding me. I'm like, oh, hey, what's up, Fido? What's going on, puppy? And oh, fucker took a bite out of my leg. I'm like, ow, what the hell?
Yeah, that could be dangerous with all the diseases and shit.
Oh, it wasn't just dangerous because of the diseases. It was dangerous because they were trying to rip me apart. There were like frickin' 8 or 9 of them. And again, these are Shetland pony-sized beasts, and I don't have my gun on me. I'm like, oh my god! And so I spin around and I try to kick the crap out of the little bastard, and he backs up, and the one that was in front of me is now behind me, and it takes a bite, tries to take a chunk out of my leg, and I'm like, I get what's going on here, you little bastards! So I run to a building right away, and I put my back to a building, and it's like, yeah, what you gonna do now? And so they couldn't surround. And I start picking up rocks and pelting them as hard as I can. And after a couple howls, they're like, this isn't worth it. They move on. But like, if I didn't keep my cool, if I was elderly or if I was a child, I'd be dog food too.
Ugh.
Drink.
Yep. This is my last one, dude. I'm already fucked up.
You're foobar. All right. So let's say you're a Western volunteer, and whether that's with the YPG or whether that's Ukraine, I'm going to give you something that nobody else on Reddit apparently wants to post, and that's a packing list. You're welcome. You ready for this? The first thing you're going to bring is you're going to bring a life straw. If you're worried about water, a life straw is probably the best to go. The other alternative is what? Tablets is a good way to go.
I use the iodine.
The iodine tablets, also a super way to go. Food-wise, usually there'll be a decent amount of food, but I would recommend multivitamins of some sort, because when I was in the YPG, we got fed nothing but flatbread. You have nothing to eat but cigarettes for days. Enjoy your cigarettes to eat. And so you get a lot of people, and you're not getting the right vitamins, you're not getting a lot of protein, your mind starts slowing down, and then you start doing really dumb things, like almost tripping on IEDs like I did. So keep your health up, get good water, get good food. Socks, wool socks, thick, good wool socks, plenty of them. Keep your feet clean. Have something for entertainment, just like a tiny little MP3 player or something of that nature. Keep your phone off. Things are really dangerous now with phones talking to cell phone towers, because people that you don't want to know your position will know your position. Yank that SIM card off right out. One of the things you don't realize when you're in the Army is there is such a large structure of logistics. There's a logistical supply chain that keeps you fed, keeps you hydrated, freaking keeps toilets up and things of that nature. But when you're at the YPG, their entire logistical train consists of that one rowboat I told you about. And it's like there's only so much they're going to float back and forth on that thing. And one Toyota Camry coming up and down from Turkey. And so the only thing we had to eat were cigarettes. Somehow the YPG had taken an Arden cigarette factory and were pumping out nothing but Arden cigarettes. You had machine-pressed flatbread that had no nutrients whatsoever, had to have maybe like 2 grams of flour. I don't know how they produce this thing. And then sugar water. I hate to hesitate to call it tea. It was just sugar water. And you're going on that for half a year, but you're burning calories like crazy, because this isn't like some Survivor Island scenario where you just lay back in the sun and wait your time out. You got to be rucking, you got to be marching, you got to be fighting, etc., etc. So you're hungry. So freaking hungry that I thought I was gonna eat the dogs that were eating people. Like, I'm gonna go club them over the head and I'm gonna eat them, and I'm gonna be one step away from cannibalism. We had already eaten all the farm animals out of the area. We ate the geese, we ate the chickens. If there was ever an animal that was edible, it was gone in like the first day. And at this point, we'd not eaten in at least a week or two, anything, and we overtook an ISIS position,
because we are
and there,
on an hour.
on the ground...
But if you want to watch more, there'll be another episode. We're gonna call this series War Stories. Again, it's probably gonna be under Fortnite files, just because I'm gonna clump the type of game and stuff I'm playing together. So these are Fortnite stories, War Stories Part 1. Thank you, and as always, what do we say? We say